I recently saw something that disturbed me on social media and sent me into quite a panic. And I said, that's enough. I am putting a lockdown on my social media apps and living in real life. If I want to stop scrolling and doom scrolling, I need to just think about, what do I want to do today? What kind of magic do I want to create today? And just do it. So follow along for some fun little chores with me today on the Sunday. So I wanted to read you something that I was listening to on a podcast by Jenna Zoe, and it was talking about how to get rid of our fears, essentially. And one of the things two things that I wanted to read to you that I thought were pretty impactful were the following. So,
my main wish is for all of us to look at our fears and our shadows and clean all of them up. So, an exercise that I recommend is that you get out a pen and paper and you just dump every single fear you have on that piece of paper or that journal, that notebook. And you don't let it be a conscious exercise. Write anything that comes up, even if it's surprising that you might think that you have that fear. Just write everything down possible. So, what you're going to do and what you're going to experience as you relook at those fears is that you're going to understand that they're going to feel separate from you all of a sudden. They're going to feel like you have distance from them. And it's all well and good to know what your fears are in your mind. You know, I did for such a long time think that that was enough. But there is something about putting them all out together as a whole and seeing the whole architecture of your specific ego, because a lot of those fears you're going to find are going to contradict themselves.
that she was talking about that I really appreciated was, we're going to have to get out of our heads and out of the books and stop reading about spirituality and instead remember to learn how to practice it, remove myself more and more from what I see on social media, and instead live in the actual world, because I see the world and it's beautiful, and I like look at the sun and I let it, penetrate into my eyes and remember that life is really good. And so I guess all of that to say that when you feel stuck, move. That's my mantra that I've really come up with in the past couple of years. And it seems simple, but it's actually so impactful. As if when you're starting to feel this rigidity and fear creep up, is get moving, get your body moving in some way, whether that's getting up or creating a plan or taking some sort of small action, because it always snowballs. I wanted to quickly show you what these were. So these are loofahs. Whenever I was first growing them, it took a long time for these to germinate. And then even after they had germinated, they were like this big forever. And then finally, towards the latter half of the summer, they really took off and were going crazy. And then they finally produced, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loofahs. But you're supposed to let them dry on the vine, and by the time I was going out of town for the holidays, they were still green and then starting to get a little soft. And so I'm curious to know if these really turned out well versus just like rotted on the vine. So let me show you up close. These were green and then started to rot a little bit, but it looks like maybe things have turned out pretty well. So you can use these as a loofah. So let's see. It's very slimy and gross. So I think this is maybe a success. Let's look. So here is the cut up loofah that you can use to scrub dishes or wash your body with. And you can just cut it up into these little sections, or you can cut them up and then some people sew them into different like square, rectangular type of shapes for the bath. So pretty cool. All right, so getting towards the end of my yard cleanup, I wanted to talk about how I'm disposing of some seeds. So some of these seeds are older or things that I definitely don't want to grow anymore this season or the next season. And so I figured I could either throw these away or give them to someone or put them back in the ground. And I felt like putting them in the trash was wrong, and I don't really know anybody that I would give these to. I don't really know my neighbors that well. So I figured what could be cool is to just put them back in the ground. All seeds yearn in some degree to be back in the ground, and I figured I would give them that. Felt like something sweet to do, and another way to make the mundane spiritual and intentional. So I've got a bunch of things like alyssum and dill and rainbow chard, and maybe I'll get lucky and some of these will spring up if they want. It's still so cold here in January, so I don't have hope that they'll actually germinate, but I feel like this is the best way to give them what I guess they would probably desire, so not to be put in the landfill somewhere. So I will put these babies in the garden. Alright, so lastly what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the tops of all of these beds with just like garden waste. I don't have any leaves because it's been so windy here. I actually didn't have to rake my lawn at all this year, which is pretty nice. But what I did is I just took like the old flower heads off of a hydrangea bush, these old ferns. And what I'm going to do is just cut them up and cover the tops. And then when it's time to plant here spring, I will either probably remove the tops or just put a bunch of compost on top of that and then plant in that. So here we go. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining in our weekend chores, stopping our doom scrolling, doing some fun work out in the garden, and I will see you in the next one.